Hello, everyone. So, in this seminar, I would like to establish a new term, the term of spiritual science fiction. And this is an idea that I've been, thinking about quite some time now. And I feel that I finally have some kind of basic understanding of it that I could present it to my followers and students and those who may find these ideas interesting. So there's a term called spiritual science, and this term, a lot of people use it, but one individual whose whole philosophy is based on spiritual science is by the name of Rudolf Steiner. So he wrote over like 30 20 books that he physically wrote, and then there's like 300 books that are credited to him, but those are just lectures that were transcribed, and all of that is within the genre of spiritual science. And then there are his more modern students who carry forth that tradition of spiritual science, one of them being Robert Powell, who is uh, the current sort of practitioner and who is still around of that tradition. Now, from that side, from their perspective, this is it's real. Like, it's real to them. These are experiences that they've had, and ideas that have come to manifestation, and they see. So to them, is science, right? It's science of the spiritual world. They are able to confirm their discoveries through direct experience. Um, Same thing could be said about Buddhism, right? In Buddhism, it's considered a science, a Buddhist science, and they do have these pretty wild claims of multi-dimensional experiences and different levels of consciousness and reincarnation and karma, and these that sound very fictional to us who are not acquainted with those ideas. But from their side, from those who are engaged in that kind of work, it's a real experience, right? Same thing could be said with Carl Jung, who had these visionary experiences, and he didn't use the term spiritual science, but he was able to confirm these experiences through direct uh, knowing, right? So now these are guys who are way out there. They're way out there. Uh, they and that's what happens when you engage a particular field within your field of consciousness for 20 or 30 years. You you know these experiences become real to them, but for those of us who are approaching those ideas for the first time, they sound like what? Fiction, right? So that's why I would like to establish the term spiritual science fiction. And the main purpose of that term is for those who are coming into this field, you know, their first couple of years of this uh, uh, sort of culture or hobby, most of this is going to sound like fiction, right? And it should sound like fiction. And when I approach Steiner's ideas and his students, I still consider them spiritual science fiction because um, a lot of it sounds too far off. In particularly some of Steiner's, more creative ideas, they sound way out there, right? And you know, there is this story where Carl Jung, the psychologist, someone recommended him to Rudolf Steiner, which Jung never mentioned in his writings. And so, according to this story, Carl Jung did know the work of Rudolf Steiner, and he did attempt to engage his work, but his conclusion was that he belonged in a psychiatric hospital, and didn't pay attention to his stuff. um, but nevertheless, there is others who do present the case that no, it is Steiner's work does provide a service to the world, And there have been students who have written PhDs, what they call a dissertation, and sort of defending, that philosophy, right? The academics, and they're trying to sort of bring, Steiner's ideas into academia, because his work is not really taken as seriously as, the other more academic philosophers, like maybe Nietzsche, right, or Schopenhauer, or like the more classical philosophers. Same thing for Jung. They don't teach Carl Jung in 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 academia, right? So there's a whole, world to discover there. So as we can see, it starts getting really complicated. But in order for us to find a way into these ideas, I think the term spiritual science fiction is a really good entry point, because it allows us to entertain these ideas, knowing that they are very, far out, but it gives us this sense of what is possible. Like some of these are possible in theory, right? And the idea is that if we're able to manifest at least, 1% of what is possible within these, descriptions, then I think that is some good progress. I remember back when I used to watch movies, right? You know, I, you know, First I would, I started off watching horror movies, because that's initially what, your mind is drawn to, is like these sort of, really dark stuff. But then from there, hopefully, that provides uh, a function for you to sort of evolve to the next sort of genre, which is science fiction, the more sort of fairy tale romantic type of movies. And science fiction movies are wonderful because they're nice, they're pretty, they're beautiful, but they're also deep and introspective. And you know movies like Interstellar, right, that does present what could be possible, intergalactic travel, right, you know the theories of space and time. These things do have an aspect of factuality in them, and it is really interesting to entertain what the possibilities are. And the term there is um, beholding. We are able to behold these possibilities, and that is great. Once we, if we are able to imagine these things, to behold what could be possible, then that acts as a source of inspiration. And then what our next step is to try to manifest, 1% of what we are able to behold. And if we're able to do that, that is huge. That is huge, right? And now, as most artists will know, is that the ideas that you have are, enormous. If you're an artist, a musician, a poet, or a writer, you can sit down every single day and come up with a draft with ideas. And I'm sure most of you have like, hundreds of unfinished projects in your computer or studio, right? And the next phase is to actually sort of finish what you start. But you have a wealth of inspiration, right? The difficult part is trying to finish a project, because a project is never finished, it is abandoned. So that's the kind of mentality that I would like to present, is for us to be able to draw from a field of spiritual science fiction of what could be possible, and then for us to try to say, okay, out of what is presented or offered to us, what can we actually bring to reality, right? Where we can turn fiction into nonfiction. So that hopefully that presents my sort of idea of entertaining spiritual science fiction, and being able to draw inspiration and guidance from it, in order for us to be more productive in the world and more creative, and build better, more creative and harmonious communities. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope that doesn't sound too uh, science fiction.